how's it going? My name is Esley Greer from Entertainment Fanatic Reviews, and I want to thank Andrew Cavanaugh from Cavanaugh's Corner for letting me take part in this collab video. Today we are talking our top 5 worst 4Ks in our collection, so let's get into it. So before I get into it, I do want to say that I've been watching Andrew and his channel for about 2 or 3 years now because he's helped me a lot with, picking up certain 4Ks and ones that he's reviewed, and he's usually my go-to when it comes to picking up new 4K releases or previous ones. But also, part of these I don't particularly think are bad. Some of these are just disappointing because I usually just pick up ones I hear have good to great transfers, or if I'm surprised that a certain film is on 4K, or if I feel like just picking up a new release. Some of those titles are on here. But with that said, coming in at number 5, we have Terminator 2 Judgment Day, which, yes, I know this is hailed as like the worst 4K disc there is, but I actually don't mind it, even though it is on this list. Like I said, part of these I enjoy, and I picked this up because 1, the steelbook is awesome, and 2, I just want to see how bad this 4K is because I've heard so many people talking about it and saying it's the worst, and now I think like the new Pirates of the Caribbean one is considered like the new low, so I don't have that. It's not on the list, so don't worry about that. But my main gripe with this one is just like the main gripe that everyone else has with this is like the unnecessary CGI over Arnie's face and certain shots, and then like there's quite a bit of DNR in here. But the main thing that gets to me is the lack of HDR. At times it does look pretty good when there's like daytime scenes, but I think that scenes at night could pop out a bit more because there's a lot of blues and reds in this movie. But I don't hate it. I made a whole video talking about me not hating it, so yes, it is on the list, but that's because, the lack of HDR and like everything else that everyone talks about for this release. So I'm gonna cheat and go with 2 titles from my number 4 pick, that being Big Fish and The News of the World. The main problem I have with these 2 discs is, yes, they're shot on 35mm, and you would think that News of the World would look pretty good, because it was shot on film and it's a newer release, but there's a lot of daytime scenes in here that you think should pop out a bit more than they do, and these just look like average 4K discs. They're a little bit better than the Blu-rays that they have included, but I'm just not a fan of them because you would think with all these daytime scenes in both of these films that it would really pop out, but it doesn't. The main scene that pops out with Big Fish is like the one you can see right here with the bed of flowers, and some of the scenery does stand out for News of the World, but you would think with like certain close-ups and the way that these films are lit that they would pop, but they just don't. They seem like pretty average 4K discs to me, so that's why I have them at number 4. Coming in at number 3, I'm going to cheat and put 2 titles once again because these 2 titles do share the same problem, that being War of the Worlds and The Invisible Man. Yes, they're shot on 35mm and they should look phenomenal, but my main gripe with these is the way that these films are lit, and I'm not saying that they should pop out, I just don't like the color choices that they use in both of these films because it's just like there's a lot of grays in here that I think these are like artistic choices by both directors involved, but you would think that the close-ups and everything and the daytime scenes with these would pop as well, but there's just like this gray tint over it that I'm not a fan of, because if it was lit different and had a different color tone, we would see a lot more than we would on the Blu-ray. But yeah, these, nothing really special. They're another set of average 4K discs, but I recommend them because they are good movies. But also War of the Worlds has quite a bit of CGI, and like earlier CGI from 06, I believe, that doesn't look good. And then you got newer CGI with The Invisible Man, but that does look good. So yeah, these just suffer from the same thing, that being very gray and light. That's what you get pretty much, is like the light gray that has the handprint on it. Nothing really stands out with these. So I'm probably going to get canceled for my number 2 because a lot of people I know are fans of this box set. And yeah, coming in at number 2, we have the Lord of the Rings trilogy on 4K. I know Andrew was a fan of this, and I know a lot of other 4K collectors were as well, but the thing that I'm not a fan of is like there's quite a bit of CGI that doesn't really hold up to today's standards, and I believe this was shot on 35mm, but they had so much CGI that the film that's used doesn't look quite as good as it should. You can see detail on people's faces during close-ups, but not as much as you would think, because I've seen other films that are older than this to have a lot more detail in it, like Speed or They Live and Shawshank Redemption. Those have a lot of detail, and you would think that a film that's newer than that would look better than that, but it just doesn't. And I don't know, this box set and trilogy just doesn't do it for me in 4K, and I hate that there's a lack of detail in the film, and also there's just quite a bit of CGI that doesn't really quite mix that well. And if it wasn't for this release, given I picked this up before Terminator 2, but if it wasn't for this release, I wouldn't know what DNR is, you know, where they smooth out the picture in certain shots. There's quite a bit of that in this box set as well, but I'm just not a fan of this box set either, because it's really poor quality cardboard, and the stuff that's holding in the discs, I made a video about it and I dropped the discs twice within like 20-30 seconds because it just doesn't work that well, and the arms that's used for it don't work either. So just this release as a whole, I'm not a fan of it, and just the transfers don't really do it for me. And as much as I used to love these films, I don't enjoy them as much as I used to, and that might be because of the transfer, because I was expecting such greatness out of it, because this was like the main title that got me into 4K. Like, once I saw everyone reviewing this and saying it's one of the best transfers out there, I had to pick this up. And given I didn't pick it up until like 7-8 months into my 4K collection journey, but yeah, if it wasn't for this release, I wouldn't have all these 4Ks on my shelf. So yeah, it's a love-hate relationship with this, but yeah, the Lord of the Rings box set comes in at number 2. So I've already touched upon Terminator 2 and Lord of the Rings. You're like, what could be worse than that? Well, coming in at number 1, we have a little film called 300. This one I was surprised to find on 4K, and I haven't seen this movie in like 10 or 11 years, and I was excited to pick it up because the reviews I saw for it were decent to pretty good. So I was like, okay, I'm going to give it a shot. And I like the way that the cover looks on here. I like the way that it feels. It doesn't feel like an average 4K slipcover. I just like it. It looks pretty cool. The back looks pretty cool as well, but man, this 4K release, I just couldn't get into it, because I'm going to bring up something and you're probably going to call me a grain hater, but I'm not, because some of my favorite releases are older films that have grain in it, like The Shawshank Redemption or They Live or Speed. Those are some pretty good transfers, and those have grain in it, but this one has so much grain in it that, I don't know, there's just so much grain in it that I couldn't really get invested with the movie, and there's just like certain things you think would shine through and pop out, but they just don't. And like the mix of CGI and very, very bright like color tones with this, especially with the sunset, just doesn't mix well with my TV. It looks really weird. So that really, really heavy grain mixed with CGI and just the way that Zack Snyder shot this, I'm not a fan of, because there's a lot of blue screen and green screen, I believe, that just all of that melded together just doesn't work for me. And there's certain things that you would, like I said, would shine through because it was shot on film, but it just doesn't. There's a lot of detail missing in this release. So yeah, coming at number 1, we have 300. So I want to thank Andrew from Cavanaugh's Corner for letting me take part in this collab video. This is one that I wanted to make on my channel, but once we brought it up and like figured on whose channel we should do it on, we did our top 5 4K steelbooks on my channel. We're doing this video on his channel, and we might have a couple more collabs in the works on each other's channel. So make sure to go check out the previous collab, and if you want to check out my channel, you are more than welcome to. And with that being said, I want to thank you so much for letting me take part in this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Cavanaugh's Corner here. Just want to say big thank you to Esley over at Entertainment Fanatic Reviews for doing another collaboration video with me. It was pretty cool that he wanted to do this, and again, I really like his channel, and you know, again, he's a big fan, and I love the fact that he's just as much into this as I am. And when he says that, you know, I kind of got him into this whole format, it really is, it's a wonderful thing to hear, and I love that. I love hearing that, and it's great that we get to work together to do these videos. But as you just heard, his top 5 videos, his top 5 worst 4Ks, he had some really interesting choices in there. Honestly, like I was surprised to see a couple of them on there. But again, you know, it's a matter of opinion, and I respect his opinion. And I made my own top 5 here. And thankfully, you know, the one thing I gotta say that's great about 4K is that there's more good than bad. And thankfully now that these movies have been out for a while, the 4K format has been around for a little while. We don't get as many really bad 4Ks as we used to. You probably already have an idea of what my number 1 is, but these movies that I have on this list are movies, all 5 of them are movies that I enjoy. And they are movies that I would go back and rewatch, but some of these I actually would openly avoid the 4K. And I actually reviewed this a few years ago, and my review still kind of stands up. I would make some revisions to it, but that would be the 3-film collection of The Expendables. This is one here that I remember finding it in a Walmart at random, and this is actually kind of hard to find, or it was. I don't know if it still is or not, but I remember kind of looking for this and not being able to find it anywhere. And I remember picking it up and being like really excited. And the movies on here, first and foremost, the 3 movies are their original theatrical cut. It's HDR10 on all of these. And really, my whole issue with these movies is that there really isn't much of a difference from the 4K from the Blu-ray to the 4K, I should say. There is a slight uptick in the color palette because of the HDR. The black levels are a little bit better on all 3 of them. But mainly, there's really not much of a difference in terms of picture, especially if you're going to watch them upscaled to 4K. The original Blu-rays they're fine. And the fact that they left out the extended cuts of all 3 films and everything else, really, it's kind of a shame. But for me here, the reason to get these is that they're in Dolby Atmos on these discs. And the Dolby Atmos is actually pretty solid on these. But I think these movies could have been a whole lot better if they actually cared about the transfer. And Lionsgate has done a lot of really good releases since then. But sadly, this was not one of them. And it's really kind of a shame. That's a big missed opportunity there. Now, number 4 is the only animated movie on my list, and I reviewed this as well a while back. But this one here is one that I really, I remember being excited when I got it because I actually really enjoyed this movie. But watching it in 4K, I didn't really see very much any sort of difference between this and the Blu-ray, and that is Zootopia. Whoop, I almost dropped it. But there's Zootopia, and this is actually the Steelbook from Best Buy, which is kind of a cute design. It's cute. You know, it's a cute movie. I enjoy this movie. I think it's a lot of fun. You know, in terms of the video, it looks okay. It looks fine. Comparing it to the Blu-ray, it's a very small step up. The HDR10 helps very slightly in this, very, very slightly. And the other thing I wanted to mention is that the audio track on this is a Dolby Atmos track, and the sound is absolutely horrible on this disc. This is like a big change from Expendables to this, whereas the Expendables discs, the audio is actually really good, and the picture is not so great. With this, the picture is just not that great. I mean, it looks fine, but the audio on this is terrible. And it's kind of a shame because this movie could have really benefited from a great Atmos mix. There's a lot of stuff going on in this movie, but I found it to be extraordinarily quiet. And I remember watching this and having to constantly pump up my volume on my surround sound setup. And I don't mean like a few points up. I mean 20 to 30 points higher than I normally watch a film. It was like I thought I was deaf. I thought I was deaf, and it's a shame because it's a really great animated movie. So now we're going to go to our top 3. And the top 3 here, like I said, these are, in my opinion, the worst of the worst. I was so upset when I watched these for the first time because these are 3 movies that I love and adore, and they really messed them up on 4K. And the first one I'm going to talk about here, so number 3 is Forrest Gump, one of the most beloved films of the 20th century. I remember when this movie came out, it was a giant thing when this movie came out. The movie is still quoted to this day, but Paramount really did not do a great job with this. And like the other 2 I'm going to review here, I hope that at some point Paramount issues a revision of this, because they have reissued the movie in like a 25th anniversary or something, but they really have not fixed any of the problems that the 4K discs here has. The biggest thing for me is that they really used a lot of digital noise reduction in this movie. Too much of it. The movie is very much flat as a pancake. The detail level is actually lost on the 4K, which I couldn't believe when I first watched it, but they lost the detail level. And the color palette in this it does have Dolby Vision HDR. The color palette is oversaturated to the point where it looks unrealistic. And like I said, the DNR is egregious in this. And you can actually tell when the digital noise reduction was used. The good news is that the Blu-ray that comes with this is great. But the 4K is a mess. The Dolby Atmos on this is actually pretty good. I actually thought the sound on this was better than the picture, and it's such a shame because it is a really great, it's an amazing film, and I really enjoy it. But when I go back and rewatch this movie, I do tend to go for the regular Blu-ray, which is, again, a real shame. Now, number 2 is actually a contender for my favorite film of all time. Now, I don't really have like a number 1 favorite film, but I like to say that this next film is like my gun to the head answer. In other words, if somebody had a gun to my head and said, "What's your favorite movie of all time?" I would probably say it's this one. And I remember when I did this review a few years ago for this disc, and I got a lot of hate for it. And to the point where I doubted myself, and I actually rewatched this disc and realized that it's not me. The movie did look as bad as I thought it did, and that is Goodfellas. What a disaster zone poor Goodfellas is here. This is a horrible transfer from Warner Brothers, probably the worst one that they've ever done, honestly. This one here, the black levels on this, there are none. There are no black levels on this. Black levels in this are completely crushed to the point where the Blu-ray is a remarkable step up. I do not know what happened with this transfer. It's a mess. It's an absolute mess. The HDR on this is very overblown. Kind of like Forrest Gump, it looks extraordinarily vivid, but it's too vivid. It hurt me because this is a stupendous film, and I can watch this movie over and over and over again, But sadly, I don't watch the 4K of this. I just can't believe that a movie that is held in such high regard would be handled so poorly. And I think Warner Brothers almost instantly learned their lesson from this. But this is another one that Warner Brothers absolutely needs to redo. If you want to see more details about that one, go watch my review, which I'll link at the end. But we're at number one. We're at the worst of the worst. This movie to me was shocking how bad they screwed up this movie. This is one of those ones where, again, I reviewed it, and to this day, I still get comments and stuff in the video that are like, I don't know what you're talking about. The movie looks better than ever. Oh, what's wrong with this? There's nothing wrong with this. There's a lot wrong with this one. And again, I respect the opinion of Esley. I think he's a great, not only just a film critic, but when it comes to these 4Ks, me and him share a lot of opinions. And this next one was on his list, surprisingly low on the list, in my opinion. But this was one where, again, maybe it's nostalgia. I grew up with this film. I probably saw it a little bit too young of an age, but I remember seeing this movie on 4K and being so excited to watch it, and then watching it going, what am I looking at here? What did they do? And that is, of course, Terminator 2 Judgment Day on 4K. This is horrible. I will say about this disc, the one good thing I can say is that they did a pretty good job with the HDR on this. The one thing I can say, the HDR, it does help the movie. And I think the higher resolution also helps. It's crystal clear. But they made two massive mistakes with this movie. The biggest one being the extraordinary overuse of DNR. Much like Forrest Gump, there are so many scenes in this movie, especially close-ups of Arnold and other main stars of this film, where they look like a Ken doll. They look like an action figure. The definition and the depth of the picture is completely lost. And I hate that. They have removed so much film grain that there is a loss of detail. And that happens all throughout the film. The other big thing that I really did not like about this is that they changed, and I mean heavily changed, the color timing of the film. The movie is blue. It is, the whole movie has this intense blue hue to it. I was lucky enough to see this movie quite a few times before seeing it in 4K. And the film is not blue. The original color timing of the film is not it's not deep blue. And this, the whole movie, and I mean almost the entirety of the film, has this bluish hue to it. And it helps nothing. It does not add anything to the film. I actually think it takes away from the elements of the film, because the movie takes place in many different environments. Now, at nighttime, dark scenes, stuff like that, maybe the blue would help. But when you're in a mall or in a steel factory and the picture has a blue tint to it, it makes no logistical sense in those scenes. So to me, the fact that James Cameron actually oversaw this transfer, I hope he's okay, because this scared the crap out of me. It's mind-blowingly awful. it's just damaging. Except for, like I said, except for the high dynamic range, which does make the colors of some moments just pop a little more. This is the worst. This is the all-time worst. The only saving grace of this is the fact that you do get some nice special features on here, and you are better off watching it on an older Blu-ray, preferably the one where Arnold is on the bike, and I do show it in an older review here, but man, just what a waste. And again, thankfully, I have not had many really bad 4K Blu-rays in a while. I've had a couple that were just so-so, but these are the worst in my opinion. And again, these are the ones I tell people to stay away from. And I almost keep them as examples of what not to do on this format. So that's pretty much it for today on Cavanaugh's Corner. Again, want to say a big thank you to Esley over at Entertainment Fanatic Reviews for doing another collaboration with me here. And again, I wish you guys all the best. Definitely make sure to subscribe to my channel and his. And until next time, please stay safe and take it easy.